Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 4 through 7 further encourage us to be thoughtful about the vows we may make to God. If we don't intend to see them through quickly, maybe we shouldn't make them. If we don't plan to see them through, it's better that we avoid empty words, thinking they'll gain the favor of a God who already knows our hearts. Really, these verses further the theme of reverence for God. But today, I want to look at chapter 5, verses 8 through all of chapter 6. In our society, we have traditionally placed a lot of focus on wealth. Someone who is a self-made millionaire is given a little extra credit because their wealth is, at least to our minds, the sign of someone who has drive and a head for successful pursuits. We don't necessarily spend much time talking about the ethics of how one might have grown to the position of wealth they have, how they might utilize that wealth, or the ways in which that person might be thought of if they were detached from their wealth. Sometimes we think of ourselves. If I had just a little more money, then I could be happy and I could do the good things I've always wanted to do. People talk about the idea of winning the lottery, then doing charitable work for the rest of their lives and living off the interest without actually doing charitable work in the meantime. Of course, the reality of most lottery winners is that they find themselves unable to manage the finances, are unsatisfied with what they purchase using their winnings, and pursue bigger and more lavish risks in an attempt to feel what they thought the security of wealth would bring them. And then they go bankrupt. There are two lessons that the writer gives us regarding wealth. More if we had a couple hours to unpack this section, I'm sure. But we've got about 5 minutes to work with. First, wealth and the acquisition of wealth often comes at the expense of others. Listen to chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. If you see in a province the oppression of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, do not be amazed at the matter, for the high official is watched by a higher, and there are yet higher ones over them. But this is gain for a land in every way, a king committed to cultivated fields. This wise writer, the sage who penned Ecclesiastes, he is no fool. He knows if a ruler's focus is fantastic national harvest, or in modern terms, gross domestic product, then you will find at the bottom of the system injustice and oppression of those who are simply tools toward that end. And many people will be silent on the matter because the land prospers, the fields are plentiful, and those who suffer are kept out of sight. Notice the author doesn't say that the gain is for the people or the king is committed to the well-being of his subjects. The gain is for the land and the king is committed to cultivated fields. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2 doesn't deal with macroeconomics. It deals with wealth and how wealth and fixation on it affects the individual. Verse 10 of chapter 5 says this: "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity." He then proceeds through the next chapter and a half to tell us how money will not bring satisfaction. Gaining income or assets usually comes with a greater number of people dependent on that wealth. Wealth is easily lost in bad investments. Wealth doesn't follow you into the grave. There is no amount of wealth that will satisfy a person. And pursuing satisfaction through the things wealth can get you will blind you to the things that are good in life. And in the middle of it all, the author tells us that it's the simple things in life that will bring the most satisfaction. The things that wealth isn't required to enjoy. Eating, drinking, finding enjoyment in your work as God has given you the ability to. If anything should stick out to us, it's that the author doesn't believe that wealth is a virtue, nor that it is something that signals to us the inherent virtue of the one who has it. In fact, someone who finds joy in the simple things of life is more likely to appreciate the gifts of God, which is virtuous. Conversely, he also isn't telling us that someone who is wealthy can't be virtuous or enjoy the simple things in life. I believe the author is telling us a truth that makes intuitive sense. Most people cannot avoid the pitfalls of wealth, and many who are wealthy already fall into that category. If you're miserable without wealth, if you can't enjoy the simple things in life, adding money to that inability will only magnify that dissatisfaction. It would be better for us to learn to enjoy the simple joys of life than to pursue wealth towards the thrills of extravagance. I love you, and I pray today that you would seek simplicity. Seek joy in the small things, appreciate what God has already given you, and recognize that if the inherent goodness of life isn't enjoyable for you today, no amount of money will bring you satisfaction tomorrow.